then put it sideways here. Okay. All right. Let me see here. So, all right. Now I think it's on here. Okay. Let's just. Yeah, let me get out of that and go back to Zoom here because I know we're already on live right now. Got it. All right. Shalom, everyone. I'm Brother Doug. We are going to be continuing our Torah portion here today. We're going to be reading from Leviticus 19 to 20. So we're at the, I guess you would pronounce it, the 6th of ER portion right now. Okay, so we're going to be I'm going to be reading Leviticus 19 to 20. So since I'm on my phone today, if you guys notice anything different, just keep note of it, write it down. If you if it's something noteworthy, because I am going to be reading from a Septuagint here, so just try to keep note of anything different. If you want to even put a little sticky note next to it if you see a difference in your translations. Okay, so this is the Lexham English Septuagint. It's very modern English. I'm going to be reading from here. Okay, so Leviticus 19. Okay, so here we go. Laws of set apartness. Yeah, my bad, Brother Joshua. I'm kind of like dealing with this PDF of the Torah portions from a Messianic Jewish congregation, so they're probably using, most likely Babylonian Hebrew for their name of the month. So yeah, just kind of give me some favor here. So I'm not, I don't actually have a doc of the correct name of the month. So, but yeah, in their modern Hebrew, it's I spelled in English IYYAR or something like that. So it's probably incorrect.
What's Ayar?
Yeah, it's some name that they have for the name of the month. Like they got, I can definitely tell they're using the Jewish calendar names because one of our earlier portions from about 2 weeks ago was the 29th of quote unquote Nisan. So yeah, they're probably using Jewish names or modern Babylonian names. Because Abib is actually would have been the correct term for the portion we had 2 or 3 weeks ago. The portion where we did Leviticus 16, 18. So that actually would have been only a week ago. So that would have been the end of Abib. So whatever name for the month it's supposed to be after Abib is what it should have been called rather than ER. I have no idea what ER is. The PDF I'm going by for our Torah portions is pretty much probably a Messianic Jewish ministry, so they're using probably modern Jewish names. Anyway.
So, Brother, Abib is not when we begin Passover?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, they have their portion set out for 29th Abib basically, but they recalled it Nisan because when the Hebrews came back from Babylon, they inherited certain Babylonian customs. They started renaming the months. That's where we get the modern Jewish calendar names. That's why Tammuz is the name of a month. They started taking Babylonian nonsense and started trying to mix it with the Hebrew culture. That's what happened. So just kind of bear with me if the names are not correct when you're going through these portions for each month. Each specific week of a certain month, because I'm basically going by a PDF that these Messianic Jewish people are putting their own names there for the months. So So whatever, I don't even know if there was a month. Was there a name for the second month of the year? I don't think there was. So some of these months never even had a name until they came back from Babylon and started adding names. Like even I think even when you get to Maccabees, there's certain names for the months that never in the Tanakh, whoever gave them names for the rest of the months of the year, really. He, as far as we know in the canon goes, he gave them a beep for the month of Passover, which is the #1 month of the new year. So he never said, call the second month this, call the third month. He never really gave names. That really custom, as far as what I've researched, hasn't really didn't begin until the 70 years of Daniel, and then they come back and all of a sudden they got the month of Bull, this, that. It's like it seems like that was a Babylonian custom. They kind of incorporate certain names that probably come from Babylon. The most obvious are the First Kings 637, month of Zeus. So I guess Zeus the more appropriate term. Yeah. So it would be 6 of Zu, I guess, or so anyway, getting back on track here. Leviticus 19, laws of set apartness. Then Yahuwah spoke to Moshe, saying, speak in the congregation of the sons of Yashar and say to them, you will be set apart because I, Yahuwah your Elohim, am set apart. Let each one reverence his father and his mother and observe my Sabbaths. Notice how he says my Sabbaths. They're not the Jews' Sabbaths. Okay. I am Yahuwah your Elohim. You shall not turn to idols. You will not make molten mighty ones for yourselves. I am Yahuwah your Elohim. And again, very key. I would make a note of that verse right there in verse 4. That is the context of Exodus 20 when it's talking about thou shalt not make any graven images. Okay. I would definitely keep that command from in context. Let's see here. So let's see here, verse 5. Whenever you sacrifice an offering of peace to Yahuwah, and I think in the Greek here, this is where the Lexham kind of goes off in the English here. The Greek would actually indicate it's supposed to be a deliverance offering or salvation offering. So this is kind of like translation error here. So offering of deliverance to Yahuwah, sacrifice a tenth from yourselves. Whatever day you sacrifice, it shall be eaten. And on the next day, and if there is something left until the third day, it shall be burned up by fire. But if it is eaten for food on the third day, it is no longer fit as an offering. It shall not be acceptable, but the person who eats it will bear guilt because he profaned the set apart things of Yahuwah, and so those persons who consume it will be utterly destroyed from among their people. You know, very simple there. So again, take note of the parallels between that and the Passover lamb. Very similar. You know, you pretty much at third, you know, the next morning you're supposed to burn it by fire. This is very similar. The only difference is on the third day it says to burn it. So I would have to go back to see how exact the parallel is between this deliverance offering and the Passover lamb. And so those persons who consume it will be utterly destroyed from among their people. So basically, when you offer Yahuwah's sacrifice, and it's a sacrifice that's to be eaten by the priests and the people, like certain offerings, the people could actually take in part and eat of. You cannot eat it for it to be a offerable sacrifice on the third day. If it is, then it's sin for you to do that. So by the second day, they would have had to finish it. And if not, they have to burn it by fire on the third day. Okay, so let's see here. So verse 9, and you, when reaping the produce of your land, you will not finish your harvesting from the field completely. You will not gather up what is left over your harvest, and you will not glean your vineyard, nor will you gather up the fallen grapes of your vineyard. You will leave them for the needy and for the resident sojourner. I myself am Yahuwah your Elohim. Notice how it says, though, your vineyard. This is talking about context in the land of Israel, in a vineyard that you own. Okay, that's the context to that commandment. So as we're in captivity, I don't know how much you can really apply to that when you don't have a vineyard, you're not owning a piece of land. So it's kind of a little different where we are right now. So anyway, I could be wrong, but from what I see, the context of verse 9 and 10 is talking about when you're going into the land of Canaan. Okay, it even says produce of your land. Okay, you will leave them for the needy and for the resident alien. I myself am Yahuwah your Elohim. You shall not steal, you shall not lie, you shall not slander anyone against his neighbor. Notice how slandering against your neighbor, bearing false witness against your neighbor is not the same thing as lying. They're two separate sins. Notice that. A lot of people read, and I've been guilty of this in Exodus 20 in the past, understandably, mistakenly thinking bearing false witness is the same thing as lying. It's not. Bearing false witness means, like, in judgment, you're making a false account on your neighbor. It is a type of lying, but it's not synonymous with lying. Lying in general is a separate sin. Okay, so verse 12, and you shall not swear by my name unrighteously. So basically, you know how Yahushua says, don't swear by heaven, for it's his footstool, and Yahushua quotes that. This is what the context of swearing by Yahuwah's name means. Don't make an unrighteous promise. Don't promise Yahuwah something like, as Yahuwah lives, I'm going to do this, and then you don't keep your promise. That would be swearing by his name unrighteously. And you will not profane the name of your Elohim. I myself am Yahuwah, your Elohim. You will not act unrighteously against your neighbor, neither shall you rob him. And certainly the wages of the hired servant will not remain with you until morning. The majority of the world does this. They don't pay you until a week or 2 weeks from what you've worked. Okay. I will not speak in any insulting way. Concerning a deaf person, you will not place a stumbling block in front of a blind person, meaning you don't let a blind person walk into a pole, okay, which I've done in my heathen days. I've actually let a friend like that had cataracts walk into a pole thinking it was funny, but it's not. It's very sinful to do that. Okay, so, and let's see here. And you will reverence Yahuwah your Elohim. I myself am Yahuwah your Elohim. You will not act unfairly, meaning you will not be biased in judgment, unfairly in right ruling. You will not defer to the face of a needy person, nor shall you be impressed by the face of a powerful person. You will rightly rule your neighbor in righteous right ruling. You will not proceed treacherously among your people. You shall not attack the blood of your neighbor. I myself am Yahuwah your Elohim. You will not hate your brother in your thoughts. Firmly reprove your neighbor, and you will not incur guilt on account. Notice how it says you will not hate your brother in your thoughts. Notice how it makes a distinction here of who you're commanded not to hate. Notice how it says do not hate your brother in your thoughts. So when Yahushua is talking about hating someone in your mind, he's talking about his brother too, if I'm not mistaken, in Matthew 5. Firmly reprove your neighbor, so your neighbor is your brother right here. And you will not incur guilt on account of him, and your hand will not take vengeance for you. And you will not bear a grudge against the sons of your people, and you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Love your neighbor as yourself. Doesn't say everyone as yourself. I myself am Yahuwah. Observe my law, and you will not crossbreed your livestock with another kind of animal. Good job, Lexham. I like the way it's translated there. Makes it a little bit more sense when it in context is talking about do not crossbreed, do not breed a cow with a pig, so on and so on. And you will not sow your vineyard with different seeds, meaning you will not plant a certain seed of vegetable with another type of vegetable, or a vegetable with a fruit. I'm pretty sure they make hybrids today where, don't they do them on like cherry grapes or whatever? They even put different types of fruit.
There's something called a fluot that is supposed to be like a plum, I think, and a nectarine or something like that.
Yeah.
It's called the pluot.
Yeah. Yeah, to explain myself, what I mean by bearing false witness is not the same sin as lying. The text literally separates them as two actions. What I mean is bearing false witness is a type of lying, but it has more to do with judgment. It has more to do when you're bearing false witness against your brother, you're literally, your brother's at court and you're saying he's doing something that he never did. That's bearing false witness. Lying in general is just lying, like you're lying about anything. You see what I'm saying? So there is a distinction. It's like the idea, like to make a comparison, it would be the tribe of Judah is of Israel, but they're not all Israel. Like same type of comparison. Is that bearing false witness is a type of lie, but it's more specific. Bearing false witness would be someone raises an accusation against your brother or sister, and then you agree with that person against your brother and sister when you know truthfully they didn't do what they were accused of. That makes any sense. It's a specific type of lie. So it is separate action or sin from generally lying. It seems to be more specific type of lie, you could say. It's a more specific type of lie. You're actually bearing like false witness against your brother and sister. So anyway. You okay, Mom?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I'm just.
Okay. No, it looks like you were getting a headache.
No, I'm not.
Okay. And your hand will not take vengeance for you. So obviously you can't take vengeance for yourself. You will not bear a grudge against the sons of your people. Again, who are we not to bear a grudge against the sons of your people? You shall love your neighbor as yourself. I myself am Yahuwah. If you notice the recurring theme here, who is our neighbor? Who is our neighbor? Our brother and sister, our brother and sister. Common man is not our neighbor, contrary to popular belief. Okay. Observe my law. You will not crossbreed your livestock with a different kind of animal. You will not sow your vineyard with different seeds. You will not put on yourself a garment from two woven materials mingled together. And I think the Masoretic's a little bit more specific about that. What does it say? The linen, wool linen together. So two different type of materials actually come from two different species, keeping the same context of what it's talking about here in this chapter. Don't mixing species together, don't mix seeds together. So there's even a spiritual concept to why you're not mixing wool and linen together in a garment, because you're mixing plant with animals. If you actually do a little bit of research, you'll find out wool and linen come from different types of creations of Yahuwah. They're not even the same type of being that it comes from, that it's made from. So that makes perfect sense to me, why Yahuwah is commanding this. Okay, if someone lies with a woman for a bed of semen, but she is a household slave being kept for a man, meaning basically being kept to be a spouse to a husband, she has not been ransomed for a ransom price. Remember, we were talking about this last night, Mom? My issue with that Jesus of Nazareth series and what they say about Mary. She has not been ransomed for a price. Her freedom has not been given to her. There will be a punishment for them. They will not die. Because she was not set free. He will bring his trespass offering to Yahuwah to the entrance of the tent of witness, a ram as a trespass offering, and the priest will make atonement for him with the ram, a trespass offering for the sin that he committed before Yahuwah, and the sin that he committed will be forgiven him. So basically what I'm talking about with my mom right now is that there's a weird scene in the Jesus of Nazareth series where they kind of add something that never happened in scripture, where the rabbi's telling Joseph that, she's probably going to have to be stoned to death, even though they weren't even married yet, number one. So technically it's not adultery, even hypothetically speaking. We know she could, conceived by the virgin birth. Just to play devil's advocate, if it wasn't a virgin birth and she's pregnant, she's not even married yet. I was just saying to my mom that there's a difference between fornication and adultery. They're not one and the same. So to say that she would have had to be stoned, I want to know where the director of that movie gets that concept. And, even if that's even in the Torah, because I've yet to see anywhere from Genesis to Deuteronomy where you're supposed to stone a woman for sexual immorality. I have yet to see that. Even in Yahusha's day, you have the adulterous woman, right, in John 8. She's being stoned for adultery, not fornication. So I would like to see where they're getting that's the punishment for fornication. The only time I see that is with the Levites, with a daughter of a Levite. That's the only, I could be wrong, but that's the only time I ever see that that's the punishment that fits that exact crime. Like usually Yahuwah has a punishment that fits every exact crime. He's not going to give a punishment that fits a different crime. So that, I don't know, that's just a little pet peeve I have about that TV series from the 70s. That's a little, I don't know where they're getting that from. But anyway, we know it doesn't matter anyway. Miriam was a virgin birth. Just want to reiterate, she was a virgin birth. Doesn't really matter. But that whole scene with the rabbi, I don't know where they get that from. Sorry about the little rabbit trail there, but really doesn't make any sense to me. That scene in Jesus of Nazareth where the rabbis tell him he's gonna have to stone her or whatever, doesn't make any sense. There could have been some rabbinic tradition I'm not aware of too that they started doing that for no reason, and they started adding to the Torah. But anyway, let's see here where I leave off. Verse 21, and he will bring his trespass offering to Yahuwah to the entrance of the tent of witness, a ram as a trespass offering, and the priest will make atonement for him with the ram of the trespass offering for the sin that he committed before Yahuwah, and the sin that he committed will be forgiven him. And whenever you enter into the land that Yahuwah your Elohim is granting to you, you plant any edible fruit tree, and they clean away its uncleanness. Its fruit will be impure to you for 3 years. It will not be eaten. But in the 4th year, all its fruit will be set apart, a praiseworthy thing to Yahuwah. And in the 5th year, you will eat the fruit. Its produce is your increase. I myself am Yahuwah, your Elohim. So it's talking about, basically the idea of you let the land rest for a little bit. You let the first fruits rest a little bit before you actually eat of the increase. So it's talking about the first 4 years will be set apart and all that. And then in the 5th year, you will eat the fruit. Okay, so verse 26, do not eat on the mountains. Now, your version will probably say, do not, what does yours say, Mom? I know
It says do not eat any meat with the blood in it.
Yeah, so that eat on the mountains is like I guess, an idiom talking about how they would offer sacrifices on hills, on every high hill, So what the Septuagint is doing is it's kind of paraphrasing, and it's saying do not eat on the mountains, which obviously the context is sacrifices, and it's talking about how they would sacrifice on the high hills. They even kept doing this, trying to use this for Yahuwah. If I'm not mistaken, too, before there was a temple, they would try to use these altars on the high hills to sacrifice to Yahuwah, which he said not to do. So what he's saying to them is, in general, do not give offerings on the high hills. Do not give offerings and eat meat with the blood in them, and all of that. So it says, do not eat on the mountains, do not practice divination or divine omens by observing or examining birds. So again, Yahuwah is defining what's a form of divination that's forbidden. All divination is forbidden, but he's being specific here. He's talking about examining birds. Like for example, this would be similar to how people will look at a groundhog shadow and will say, oh, we got a couple more weeks of winter. That's divination. And that's what Yahuwah is talking about. Don't examine birds in that way that you're like looking at them to tell prophecy, or you're looking at them to tell the future. And this is the same thing. I hate to say, I know a lot of our brothers and sisters are deceived into this. This is why you don't look at the constellations to get prophecy, okay? It's divination. You don't look at the alignment and the stars in the sky and trying to figure out when the end times happen. That is divination, okay? And that's what Yahuwah is talking about here. He makes it very clear he doesn't want us to do that, okay? You will not make curled hair from the hair of your head, nor shall you disfigure the appearance of your beard. Again, what's the context of this? You're making round cuttings or curling your hair. Most likely that's things people would do for the dead. Okay, you're violently ripping at your beard. That is mourning for the dead. The pagans would mourn for the dead by ripping their beard off, by making round cuts on the top of their head, or even, pulling their hair, curling their hair in a weird way that they're pulling it. That's what it's talking about in context. Okay, so it says, you shall not make gashes on yourself in your body, and you shall not make tattooed incisions on you. I myself am Yahuwah your Elohim. Which today we don't make the incisions, but we're still, getting tattoos. People get tattoos on their bodies, and it's still an incision in a way. Because Mom, when the machine goes on your arm, doesn't it make a cut still to make that tattoo?
I know needles are used. I don't know that much about it. I didn't know.
So anyone that knows a little bit more about it, let me know. But I believe it's not that much different today in modern tattoos. It's not much different. I myself am Yahuwah your Elohim. You will not profane your daughter by making her commit harlotry. And the land will not commit harlotry, lest the land become filled with shameful behavior. You will observe my Sabbaths and my set apart places. You will treat with reverence. So we are to reverence his set apart places, his temple, his tabernacle. I am Yahuwah. And in a spiritual way, you could say we're a dwelling for the set apart spirit. So we're to treat our bodies with respect too. I am Yahuwah. You shall not turn to familiar spirits. And probably the word familiar spirits is not correct here. It's probably talking about like a specific demon or unclean spirit here. So it talks about do not turn to familiar spirits. You shall not become bound to enchanters, to become defiled by them. I myself am Yahuwah your Elohim. In the presence of an aged person, you will rise, meaning an elderly person, you will get up when they walk into the room. You will pay honor in the presence of the elder, so you will reverence your Elohim. I myself am Yahuwah your Elohim. And if someone comes, a resident sojourner among you in your land, you will not oppress him. Just as the native among you, so will be the resident alien who comes to you, and so you shall love him as yourself. For you were resident aliens in the land of Egypt. I myself am Yahuwah your Elohim. You shall not act unfairly in judgment of measurement and in weights and scales and balances and volumes. Just righteous scales and honest weights and a righteous liquid measure you will have. I myself am Yahuwah, who brought you from the land, out from the land of Egypt. Now you will observe my regulations and all my commands. You will do them, and you will do them. I myself am Yahuwah your Elohim. No problem, Mom. So that's the end of Leviticus 19 there. Before we start the next chapter, I want to let Brother Joshua mention something or ask a question. So go ahead, bro. I don't know if you had anything to mention. I see your hands up.
Yeah. So in Leviticus 19 with verse 11, where it talks about lying, maybe you can comment on this, but I've heard people in this walk, it's definitely not something that I agree with, but I've heard people in this walk point out that when Abraham or when Yitzhak lied, when they went into Mitzrayim, when they lied about their wives being their sisters, out of fear, that was okay, because they did it for the right reason. I don't necessarily agree with that, because I think that they were it was out of fear, and it's
and also wasn't it like a gray lie technically? It was like she was his sister in a way. So I think people don't realize the context of that story, that later on Abraham even explains himself to what king was it, the king of Egypt, or I forget which king he was, where he says, well, technically she is my sister, technically, because she is a common kinsman to me, technically. So he kind of expounds and explains to the king, and he, he's kind of apologizing in a way. He's like, listen, like, I didn't mean to deceive you, but, you guys are like about to, you guys are way numerous over here. I was afraid you would kill me for her. And then he talks about, well, in a way, I didn't lie because she's technically a sister to me.
But it still is a lie, because the implication and what you cause people to think is deception.
Yeah.
So
I have seen also where Yahuwah treats, and I need to look more into this, but it seems like there's a higher standard to us between each other versus non-believers. In a way, there's a distinction, because throughout all of 19, it's all about between us. It's all about Israel, right? So when you look at the places, usually the places where Yahuwah might not consider it sin. Usually it's when his people are dealing with people of the world, usually. And so there is a distinction there. So, again, it says, do not bear witness against your neighbor, your brother. There seems to be a context here. I could be wrong, but there seems to be a distinction between how we treat our brothers and sisters and how we have to act in the world. And it seems like Yahuwah does give allowances, like when the greater will is his people to get into Jericho. He has Rahab even lie for, there's certain exceptions to the rule, I would say. I would answer them like that. There's certain exceptions to the rule where you're dealing with Gentile heathen that are trying to harm you, that, in a way Yahuwah allows it. Doesn't mean it's righteous to do it. I'm not saying I'm giving people license to lie. I'm just saying there seems to be a distinction, even in Leviticus 19, what we just read. This is all talking about how we're supposed to treat our brother and sister. From what I've seen in this whole chapter, it's all about the sons of your people. Don't bear a grudge against your brother or sister. It's all, isolated, if that makes any sense. It's all, I have yet to see. I mean, again, I think, that's another study I want to do eventually, show differences in the Torah, how we're supposed to treat our brothers and how we're supposed to treat the world, because there is a difference. Because a lot of people.
With that leads up a second question. 1918, about loving your neighbor as yourself. If it's only for your neighbor, then what are we to do to our enemies if Yahushua tells us to love our enemies?
Well, look at the phrase though. Love them as yourself. That's a different type of love. What Yahuwah is commanding here is, as much as you love yourself, love your neighbor, love your brother and sister. He's not saying don't love the Gentiles. He's saying there's a special type of love, a hobby that you have for your brothers and sisters. You don't treat everyone the same. See, this is the problem. Society has taught us everyone's equal, everyone's the same. Scripture never says that. Yes, we're supposed to love our enemies, but that doesn't mean I would show my enemy who hates me the same love I would show you. I love them. I want them to be saved, right? But it doesn't mean I give them the same love I give to you, if that makes any sense. There's a distinction. Israel is supposed to be above the other nations. I know a lot of people don't like that because that goes against feminism and equality and all this garbage that the world has sold us. But the fact of the matter is, Yahuwah meant his people to be above the Gentiles. His people, Yasharal, the seed of Abraham, which, by the way, if you believe in Messiah, you become part of the seed of Abraham, by the way, Galatians 3:29. We are not to be equal with the heathen. We are not. I know that sounds harsh, but that's the way Yahuwah spells out his Torah. Do this to your brother and sister. Do this to your brother and sister. If an animal dies of itself, right, give it to a Gentile. You don't eat it, give it to a Gentile. So we are to have a higher standard for each other, that how we treat each other, than the Gentiles. And I think sometimes when we universalize these commands, we're kind of putting a heavy yoke on ourselves, like the needy. When it talks about the needy in this chapter, in my opinion, it's very clear the needy that it's talking about, that you're to leave gleanings of the grapes for, in context would be your brother and sister who are poor, not some pagan worshiping another deity that comes across, because it even, I think in other chapters, Mom, doesn't it say the widow and poor among you? Doesn't use the phrase among you. So among you would mean of Israel, not of someone just passing by. And I've noticed too in translators, my pet peeve, when they talk about resident alien, or however it was phrased in the Lexham, if you look in the Greek, it's a lot more specific than that. It's actually a stranger who joined himself to you. So got to be careful with the English translators. Sometimes they try to put a little ecumenicalism in there. They try to make it look like that we treat each other equally with how we treat the Gentiles, which is not the case. It would actually contradict the same chapter that it's mentioning how you're supposed to treat your neighbor. If your neighbor's your brother, who is isolating how you treat your brother different than how you would treat a Gentile. You would love the Gentile, but you're not going to love him. Like, for example, I meet a non-believer on the street. I witness to them. I show love to them. But I'm not going to have this like agape love I would have for Joshua, Sadia, Marissa, Josie, and everyone else in this fellowship. There's nothing unrighteous about that. Yahuwah's people are to treat each other better than the world. And that's how it always was. And this whole equality idea, in my opinion, it's a heavy burden to be putting on yourself, that you're treating the world that you're universalizing every command in the Torah. When the Torah is being very specific about, the context and stuff like that. And especially since, you can, like I said, you can give an animal that dies of itself to a Gentile to eat. It's not sin to do that. But it's a sin for us to eat it. So Yahuwah does make distinction. He does. I know we don't realize that from our church upbringing, but trust me, he does. He makes distinction. All around in scripture, he talks about, Gentiles are, metaphorically speaking, not to be derogatory, but unbelievers are called dogs, pigs. Just saying. So I'm just saying there is a distinction. I'm not trying to offend anyone, but at the same time, I'm trying to be honest. There is a distinction. It even talks about not bearing a grudge against the sons of your people. He never commanded us that we can't be mad or bear a grudge against a heathen. There's no verse in scripture that says that. So again, we've universalized a lot of stuff, taking the New Testament out of context, ignorantly, not willingly, but unwillfully have taken stuff and universalized its context when it's not being universal. It's talking about specific individuals, how we're supposed to treat them versus the world, in my opinion. I could be wrong, but from what I see, there's a specific context in Leviticus 19. It's very specific. But anyway, let me just to give the Greek word I'm referring to when it's talking about sojourner or resident alien, to show you that it actually is a very specific Greek word there. Just want to go to that real quick, where it talks about how you treat, because you were strangers in Egypt. Reverence his father's mother, don't turn to idols. Here we go, verse 10, just real quick before we move on to chapter 20. Just wanted to show. Nor shall you go over your vineyard a second time, nor gather straggling clusters of your vineyard. You shall leave them for the poor and for the stranger. I am Yahuwah. Okay, and you shall not. Okay, where is the verse? Maybe it's in verse 9. It talks about. Where does it talk about? Shall not go. So. Oh, resident alien. Where are they getting resident alien from in the lexicon? Oh, for the stranger. Okay, yes. Yeah, resident alien is a little misleading. If you look at the word foreigner, guys, you'll be very interested to find out it's the Greek word proselyte, convert. Yeah. Yeah, sorry, Lexham. That's an incorrect word to be using, resident alien. That gives off the wrong idea. Wrong idea. Okay. So when it's talking about, it's actually the word proselyte. So what's a proselyte? A convert. not a pagan. Okay, so when he's talking about, just to give the full context of verse 10 there, okay, it says to leave the poor for the poor and the convert in your land. Okay, so obviously that would be the poor of Yashral. I think we could use common sense there. If he's talking about a convert in the same verse, okay, most likely it's the poor of Yahuwah's people. Just saying. Just something for people to look into. I don't expect you to agree with me right away. Just something for you to study. Just something for you to chew on. So anyway, so we're going to move on here to chapter 20. And Yahuwah spoke to Moshe, saying, now speak to the sons of Yashral. Anyone from the sons of Yashral, from those who have become converts in Yashral, who may give of his seed to a ruler. So even this particular command is not for pagans. This is for those that have joined themselves to Yashral, Gentiles that have joined themselves to him, because it even literally says converts in Yashral, who may give of his seed to a ruler, meaning Molech. So that's where they get the phrase ruler. Okay. To death let him die. The people who are on the land will stone him with stones, and I myself will set my face against that person. I will destroy him from among his people, because he gave his seed to a ruler or Molech, so that he has polluted my set apart place and profaned the name of those set apart to me. But if the native people of the land have with their own eyes arrogantly overlooked that person when he gave his seed to a ruler so as not to execute him, and I will set my face against that person and his relatives, and I will destroy him and everyone agreeing with him for the purpose of his playing the harlot toward the rulers from their people, and any person who seeks out familiar spirits or enchanters in order to commit whoredom after them, I will set my face against that person, will utterly destroy that person from their people. Indeed, you will be set apart, because I myself, Yahuwah, your Elohim, am set apart. So that's where Kapha in the New Testament quotes from. And you will observe my commandments and will do them. I myself am Yahuwah, who sets you apart. Any person who may speak evil of his father or his mother, to death let him die. He has spoken evil of his father or his mother. He will be liable. Any person who commits adultery with a married woman, or who commits adultery with the wife of a neighbor, to death let them die. So interesting that this time Yahuwah is making it equal. He's saying it doesn't matter if you commit adultery with your brother's wife or a married woman in general. That probably was a wife of a pagan. You're still going to be put to death. So that's interesting, because he literally says who commits adultery with who commits adultery with a married woman, general, or who commits adultery with the wife of a neighbor. To death let them die, the adulterer and adulteress. And this is why, everyone, why Yahusha told them, let he who has without sin cast the first stone. Where's the man? They were about to stone a woman without the man present for adultery. So just FYI, that's the context of that story. So if anyone lies, okay, so it says, let them both die. The adulterer and the adulteress. If anyone lies with a wife of his father, he has uncovered the shame of his father. Let them be put to death. They are both guilty. And if anyone lies with his daughter-in-law, to death let them both die, for they have committed sacrilege. That's definitely a modern term there, sacrilege. They are guilty, and whoever lies with a male in sexual intercourse as with a woman, they have both committed an abomination. Let them be executed. They are guilty. The one who takes a woman and her mother, it is lawlessness. They will burn him and them by fire, and no evil conduct will be among you. And One who may engage in his sexual intercourse with any four-footed beast, to death let him die. You will slay the four-footed beast. And if any woman should approach toward any animal for her to have intercourse by it, you will execute the woman and the animal to death, let them die. They are guilty. Whoever may take his sister from his father's side or from mother's side to see her shame, basically to see her nakedness, and she sees his shame, it is disgraceful. They will be utterly destroyed in the presence of the members of their relatives. He has uncovered the nakedness of his sister. They have incurred guilt. And a man who may lie with a woman indisposed because of menstruation, and so uncovers her shame, he has uncovered the source of her flow, and she has uncovered the discharge of her blood. Both of them will be utterly destroyed from among their people. And you will not uncover the shame of the sister of your father or of the sister of your mother, for she has uncovered kin. They will bear guilt. Whoever may lie with his female relative, he has uncovered the shame of his female relative. They will die childless. Whoever may take the wife of his brother, it is uncleanness. He has uncovered the shame of his brother, and they will die childless. And you will carefully keep all my commandments, all my right rulings, and do them. And the land into which I myself am leading you to settle there on it, it will not be provoked at you, or Yahuwah is basically saying, don't do this, or it's going to vomit you out. You shall not conduct yourself according to the custom of those peoples, whom I am expelling from your midst, because they did all these things, and so I abhorred them. And I said, you yourselves will inherit the land, and I myself will give it to you for a possession. Okay, a land flowing with milk and honey. I am Yahuwah your Elohim, who separated you from all the nations. And you shall separate them between clean livestock and between unclean livestock, between clean birds and unclean. And you will not abominate your lives by the livestock or by the birds or by any of the creeping animals of the land, which I myself have set aside for you through uncleanness. And so you will be a set apart people to me, because I myself am Yahuwah your Elohim, who has separated you from all the peoples to be mine. And a man or a woman with them who may happen to have a divine spirit or a chanter, to death let them both die. Stone them with stones. They are guilty. So just to expound on the last part of this chapter, because I know some people might be thinking about, what's the significance? Why does he keep reiterating, you are my people that I separated from the other nations to be mine? Most people don't realize this, but this is a historical event that is retold. This goes all the way back to the Tower of Babel, guys. This goes all the way back. I'm going to show you what I'm talking about here. So, reading from the Septuagint here, which, by the way, the Dead Sea Scrolls also agree with this reading of Deuteronomy chapter 32, verse 8. When the Most High divided the nations, the sons of Adam, okay, when he separated the sons of Adam, he set the boundaries, meaning the countries, the boundaries of the nations according to the number of the angels of Elohim. So what it's saying here is all these other nations he gave into reprobate minds to serve principalities. He's like, all right, you're not my people anymore. You want to worship Nimrod, you want to do whatever, you want to rebel against me, okay, I'm going to give you into principalities. And that's what he did. Then if we go to verse 9 of Deuteronomy 32, it says, and his people, Jacob, became his portion, or you could say even lot, his inheritance, okay, became the portion of Yahuwah. Yasharal was the line of his inheritance. So we see here, after the Tower of Babel situation happened, Yahuwah already had a plan set in his mind. He was going to take one nation for himself, and he was going to allow the other nations to be given to the reprobate mind to even worship the host of heaven. And we see this even reiterated in Acts chapter 7, when his people rebel. at a certain point when they became apostate, even says, I think in Acts 7, it says he gave Israel into to serve the host of heaven. So he treated them the same way the people at the Tower of Babel event, how he treated them. So when Yashar became apostate and didn't really want to be in covenant with Yahuwah anymore, Yahuwah's like, all right, I'll treat you like I treated the Gentiles. Okay, go ahead, serve the host of heaven. Go ahead. So this is a concept most of us are not raised with, but this is a biblical concept that Yahuwah had one nation. All these other principalities that eventually went to Satan's side, that Yahuwah originally set up over the nations, and it seems like these principalities at one point were righteous, but decided, no, we want them to worship us. We want them for us. They started getting selfish. And you see that in Psalms 82, where Yahuwah says, you will die like men. You are my sons. You are sons of the Most High, but you're going to die like men. And because they didn't want to care for the orphan and the widow and all of that, of these nations that they were supposed to rule over. Go ahead, Sister Marissa. I see you got your hand up.
Okay, so I have a question. You know how in the Middle East, the Muslim people, they actually kill homosexuals if they find them. They throw them off of buildings or they execute them. So are they following scripture when they do this?
In a way, yes. In a way, they're doing it in their own way, because all these the Torah judicial system is supposed to be in the land. So it's not like they're sinning, but at the same way they're kind of doing like strange fire, because they're first of all, they're not in covenant with Yahuwah. Number one, they don't serve the right Elohim. Number two, they're doing it in their own land wherever they are, and it's not in the land of Israel. And most of those judicial type of commands were supposed to be done when you had a Torah keeping government. You were supposed to have Levites as judges and other judges and all that. And I don't know how they do it out there, but in a way, they're trying to be obedient to their religion, which is a lot of things are similar in their religion to the Torah. They copy the Torah in a lot of their things. So I can't say it's really sinful. I think they're misled and misguided in how they operate it, because they're just basically they're taking the assumption without serving the true creator that they have the right to do that. They're kind of doing like the same thing some of our brothers and sisters are doing, where they're trying to do sacrifices in their backyards. I would kind of link that to if you look in Torah all the time when he's talking about put the homosexual to death, if I'm not mistaken, it's in the context of being in the land and all that. Even what I just read in Leviticus 19, these commands were meant to be given in the land in a way. A lot of these commands were dependent on being in the land of Israel. So
you're saying it's strange fire, what they're doing? I mean, they're not doing it as a...
kind of like, I don't think they're intentionally doing it as strange fire, sis, but yeah, I think they're just misguided. They're whoever they're worshiping as their mighty one, whoever Allah is and all that. I mean, we can go all day about how there's enough research about how Allah is not Yahuwah, but they're trying to what they think is obeying that. There is, though, the killing a homosexual of itself is not sinful. Like, I'll say that is a commandment of Yahuwah's, but there are certain parameters it seems like you would have to have. And I know this is kind of a gray area because it's not really directly said, well, you must have a judicial government and all that. But if you look at the context of when he's giving these commands out on like, capital punishment, usually you have to have a Torah judicial system to be doing capital punishment. That's why we don't do that right now. So that's what
they throw the homosexuals off of buildings.
Oh, well, that's not even a command. They're kind of just putting their own spin on it then, because you're actually supposed to stone them, not throw them off of the building. So I don't know. They're kind of doing it in an evil spirit. They probably think they're doing the right thing, but they're doing it in an evil spirit and definitely the wrong way. Even in throwing people off of buildings, Yahuwah never commanded that. So he commanded that you bring both of them. Number one. I would assume that you're supposed to bring them to be judged and you're supposed to have witnesses before you even stone them. to make sure they've done this thing. So they're definitely like skipping a lot of steps, to say the least, to do what they're doing, and they're not stoning.
And they could put somebody else in that process.
Yeah.
Throwing somebody else.
See, and what the world does is they look at Islam and say, see how mean that is, and you're trying to be like Muslims. No, we're not trying to be like Muslims. But the concept of killing a homosexual of itself is scriptural. The way they do it is wrong, but it is scriptural. I really believe when the millennium comes, and when we have a Torah judicial system in Israel that's led by Yahusha, by the way, he is going to be bringing that whole judicial system back. He did not do away with stoning, contrary to popular belief. There's going to be a lot of that happening. There's going to be people that commit bestiality, even boom, stoned. Yahusha is going to be purging. He's going to be purging. He's going to be getting rid of. Because the thing is, the context with this, because people will say, well, isn't that evil to do that, just to kill someone for a lifestyle? Not really, when you understand the problem with sin. Okay, sin is a disease. It needs to be taken care of. It needs to be, destroyed. So that's the problem, is that when you show what this generation calls mercy, or even I would say it's even worse than mercy. It's basically, allowing people to do what they do. Then you see where our country is as a nation. Our country as a nation is so screwed up because they approve of these things, like Romans 1 says. Let alone you put away the whole capital punishment thing to the side for a second. Our nation doesn't just allow these things, approves of these things. Like Paul says, actually says, oh, good job. You got Christianity as a whole, or at least more than half of the denominations approving of it, doing gay weddings. This is why our nation is in the state that we're in, because there's a curse. When you start approving of violations of Torah, violations of our Creator's laws, guess what? There's a curse to that. You get cursed as a nation. You can pray all you want, but you approve of such things, Yahuwah is not that. There's an old saying my my grandmother used to say, your prayer's not going to go past the ceiling. You can say all the prayers you want, but if this nation as a whole keeps getting more depraved and more sinful, guess what? He ain't going to hear it. He's not going to hear it. And that's where this nation is going as a whole. That's why Sodom and Gomorrah, you probably have like one or two little righteous people during the time of Sodom and Gomorrah. Yahuwah didn't hear it, because as a nation as a whole, it was extremely wicked. And that's what Yahuwah was trying to say to Abraham. And Abraham, he kept saying, oh, there's 5 righteous, 6 righteous. He's like, yeah, but there's not even that at this point. They got so depraved that they became like the days of Noah again. They literally had they probably barely even had one righteous person. And if our country keeps going the same way it's going in the next decade or so, it's going to be like that. You're going to barely have any people standing up for the scriptures in this country at all. So, I know this is a rant, but just a warning out there for people that are approving of such things. Repent. Don't approve of such things. Paul warns us about that. He warns us very, very sternly. Those that approve of such things are just as bad. So you got tons of people deceived in the church that are saying homosexuality is not a sin. They don't realize what they're doing. They're putting a curse on themselves by saying that. That is really bad. You got people making Bible translations like the Queen James Bible that is pro-homosexuality. I really believe that there's nothing that's going to stop Yahuwah's judgment on this country at this point.
No.
It's gone too far.
Yeah.
This country has become too much like Babylon of old, too much like Sodom and Gomorrah. It's almost at this point where you can't even intercess for this country anymore because it's gone way too far. We're at the point. Didn't we just legalize bestiality the other day?
Oh, it's been for a while.
Been for a while.
It's been for a while.
So
Yeah,
it's
you go
like
online, there's some really appalling stories that go along with it too.
So that I just felt led by Yahuwah's Ruach to kind of warn people out there that if you are approving of such things, you have to turn back to him and repent. You know, it's very dangerous. It's very dangerous. I know we've been conditioned by society, but we have to unlearn that conditioning. We have to unlearn what the public school system tried to shove through our throat, and how the public school system indoctrinated us about so many different things. And society as a whole has tried to indoctrinate us and get us to believe stuff that's unscriptural. So
Us women have to pray that this dust of feminism has not, you know, I have prayed many times in tears on this. Because even though when it first reared its head, I hated it. I always hated women's lib. But then you don't realize until you come to Torah how much of that dust is on your very shoulders, and you have to. I've had to repent. I've had to ask for help.
yeah,
It's very difficult because, like Daniel, we live in this Babylon, and we have the dust of it on us. And
and in a way, this country's getting worse than Babylon. In a way, the Daniel's Babylon is nothing compared to this country. In a way, they probably actually felt a little bit of shame of certain sins back then. I think we're getting to the point in prophecy where it says in the book of Isaiah, they parade their sin like Sodom and Gomorrah. We're getting to that point where I'm not just talking about homosexuality. I'm talking about in general, sin in general is paraded in this country like it's not a big deal. It's like people have almost got to the point where they think sin is not real anymore. Like there's no such thing as sin. You know, truth is relative garbage that the New Age teaches. You know, all this other nonsense. So, but anyway, I just felt led to kind of, you know, get that off my chest. But anyway, we're going to start a whole new recording. And we're going to be going to, let's see, we got Amos chapter 9 next. So we're going to be going to our prophets portion next. We'll have a new reader. Please stay tuned, everyone. We'll be back. Shalom. Just need to